Hi. Welcome. Okay, so today we are going to talk about what is the difference between, and there's several differences between EFT and trauma-informed tapping. So let's start with where I was introduced to EFT. I want you to know that my purpose of creating trauma-informed tapping came out of a lot of practice of doing EFT. So if you are somebody who has done some tapping of some form, so maybe you've done EFT tapping along to videos online, or maybe you've worked with an EFT practitioner, or maybe you worked with me years ago when my primary modality for deconditioning, for being able to live into your human design to reduce your reactivity. And actually I did a video on why learn about trauma-informed tapping. So some of the whys of like what it can help with, I'll put up there after I have finished crunching the replay. And thank you for letting me know that you can see me and hear me. That's great. So let's get into this properly. The differences between EFT and trauma-informed tapping. So EFT is great. It has, if there was no other way to decondition to help you live true to your design, I would be delighted if you had EFT as a tool. And it is one of the things that I'm formally trained in. And after a decade of doing various forms of tapping and learning about and practicing EFT with so many masterful teachers and trainers and practitioners, and then also doing various versions of tapping with other people who were already masterful at EFT and then broke away and did different versions of it, I realized that there were some really important gaps and limitations to that modality. And in the process of looking for how to fill those gaps really well, how to make the tapping that I was already doing with clients simultaneously more effective, but also safer and gentler, that was what then ended up birthing what I am calling trauma-informed tapping, because it needed a name, right? So I want to tell you a little bit more about EFT. So then as I tell you about trauma-informed tapping, so that you can make a decision about whether or not this is something that you would like to come and play and learn from me. And at the end, I'll talk about the way that I'm now teaching this publicly so that you can learn it and integrate it into your own life and your own personal practice. And I need to start by telling you some more about what is EFT, because people have, it's extremely likely that if you watch this video, that you are going to have some understanding of what EFT is. Now, you could be anywhere from I've heard the acronym, but I don't actually know what it means, all the way through to a highly skilled, highly trained EFT practitioner, or anywhere in between. So I want to give you some definitions. I want to talk about my experience, and then I want to, from there, bridge across to what makes trauma-informed tapping that I'm doing so different and so beautifully profound and such a wonderful tool for you to learn. So EFT is emotional freedom techniques with an S. It is a collection of different techniques that can be used to help a person to experience more emotional freedom. It was created by Gary Craig in the 90s, who learned it from another incredible human being. We don't need to go down all of that rabbit hole, except to say I did a lot of study of Gary Craig's work when I first got into EFT. I'm profoundly grateful to that man who appears to me as a projector, just as we layer in some human design here, and who just said, look, we can simplify the heck out of this. Now, I wouldn't be where I am today without having learnt, studied, practiced, experimented with EFT. And I have learnt from a huge number of really wonderful human beings who are doing good work in the world. And what I discovered in the process of working with EFT and a couple of major different versions of tapping that I won't go into today because we end up trying to cover too much ground in one go, is that when the default way of doing EFT with people is to do 1 hour sessions with people. And I want you to know that for most people, a really skilled practitioner can go so deeply into your system that an hour is way too fucking long. It's too long. So one of the major differences that I have done with trauma-informed tapping is tailor my sessions, and now the classes that I'm going to start, to teach you, the primary thing being not to do it with you, although I want you to understand how to do it and have an experience of it, but it's to teach you how to do trauma-informed tapping so that you can do it in tiny bite-sized pieces. Because if you are able to find, if you can get skilled enough that, like a skilled practitioner, you can go deeply into something really painful, you might only be able to sit with that pain for 10 seconds. And what happens when we structure sessions that are an hour long, where the expectation is that you will do tapping for an entire hour, you fry your nervous system. So that's one of the biggest things that I have done differently in the way that I'm now doing tapping is I spent 2.5 years doing a deep dive into the nervous system to understand how do we really truly do trauma-informed work. Shout out to Irene Lyon, who is one of the most amazing experts in the space of the nervous system. And I layered her work in. I layered the work in of how do we individualize tapping? How do I teach you as the client or the student how to tap in a way that is honoring for your individual system? That also means that I'm teaching it differently for manifestors, to projectors, to generators, etc. Because while that's kind of a human design informed version of tapping, to me that speaks to the individuality of your unique system, your nervous system. So to do really safe work means meeting each person where they're at. Now, I can do that individually in sessions, but what it means when I'm teaching you in a class is I'm teaching you the principles instead of teaching you techniques, instead of expecting everyone to do the same process the same way every time, or expecting that everyone should be able to see or sense or feel things the same way. I'm helping you understand the principles and the processes so you can keep meeting yourself where you're at. If you have only had the experience of learning EFT through videos online, and sometimes they can be very helpful. I had a few years, I'll go on a little tangent here. I had a few years where I had dug through and found some really, really masterful EFT practitioners who had done so many client sessions that they could do really effective tapping sessions online just to a camera, because they knew that if they were working with a particular topic, they had all these data points of all of these clients where they're like, these are the types of things that tend to show up for people. And so for a period of time, I spent some time tapping along to YouTube videos of very masterful practitioners. Most of them that are online are kind of rubbish, but very specific people who were very good at being able to help you peel off layers through videos. Now, that again is a good resource if you have, let's say you have no money to spend on tapping whatsoever. Then digging through and finding tap along videos from people who are highly trained in EFT can be a way to start to make progress. But let's say you've done that and you are like, yeah, that's good, but it's only taken me so far, right? Trauma-informed tapping is about helping you understand the principles so that you can go understand how to journey inside of you. How do you enter through a painful thought and get into the body and find out what it's really about in a safe, gentle, effective way? And how do you know when to stop? Yeah, how do you safely enter? How do you navigate what you find in there, and how do you know how to come out again and reconnect with the outside world? Because let's face it, most of the time we're not hovering around on the inside working through stuff. We have to be connected with the outside world. And that is the point, part of the point of tapping and doing, if we focus on trauma-informed tapping, my intention is that you can feel safer and safer and safer to be yourself. And being yourself in relationship to other people. So let me see again if I can come back to the most important differences. Many of you may have only experienced a very surface level experience of EFT. You may have tapped along to videos where somebody says, even though I have this problem, insert your problem here, I deeply and completely accept myself. And then they might have done that 3 times, and then they might have tapped through the points. And we still use these points in trauma-informed tapping. I'll do a video on the points at some point. Most of them won't do the liver point, which is a shame because there's so much anger in the liver that we need to shift, right? Some might grab around the wrist. They might do finger points. And you might think that that's EFT. And that can be a really good way, as long as you know what to focus on. That can be a good way to peel off some top layers. But I want you to know that there is a depth of work that you can learn how to do that will profoundly change your life. And it requires being able to go deeper than what most online videos can take you through. And it requires being gentler than most highly skilled practitioners will do. Because here's the other thing that I want you to know. There are 2 things that I have noticed with EFT practitioners, trainers, even master practitioners and master trainers. The quality of a practitioner's work depends, I would say this is 80-20. It's 20% what that person knows, and it's 80% how much of the work have they done themselves. So I have watched again and again and again master practitioners and master trainers who are not doing work that I felt was safe enough for my system, that I could feel that they would push, that they would override, that they would try and meet the outcomes that they wanted for a session, instead of actually truly tuning in and being attuned to my system as a client to understand, hang on, this is where Carolyn is at. And this is essential for all of us, because you could be working on, tapping can be used on a ridiculous number of things. I could probably write a list of 1,000 different things that you could use tapping on. But the most important thing that has to happen when you are working with a practitioner, or you are learning from a teacher who is teaching you how to do this work yourself, is they have to be attuned to helping, to seeing where your capacity is. Let's use that word, capacity. This word is used a lot in trauma-informed nervous system workspaces. If you've had a dig into Irene Lyon's work, you'll hear her use this word a lot. Capacity in this context just means, how emotionally fit are you? How strong is your system to be able to work with flare-ups of, can you deal with a big spike of anger or a big rush of sadness, or like an overwhelming sense of, like a massive sense of frustration? Like, how emotionally fit are you to work with really big charges? And if you're somebody who has stuffed down your emotions for a really long time, because that's what you were taught in childhood, because that's what your society or culture or family or social circle or the media taught you to do, it's not your fault. But what it means is that your emotional capacity, your emotional fitness, your ability to work with really big emotions is very low. Which means when you're starting to work with a tool like tapping, You need somebody to guide you to do really gentle, tiny bits of work at a time. Just like if you came to me and you were very, very unfit. Let's say you're a 50-year-old who hasn't done any structured exercise since you were in high school. So you've spent more than 30 years working an office job, coming home tired, sitting on the couch, watching TV, and you've just been doing the best you can. But if I ask you to walk up a flight of stairs, you're going to be huffing and puffing. I am not going to ask you if you say to me, Carolyn, I really would like to run a marathon in my life, and next year there's this marathon on in my city, and I'd really like to do it. Can you train me? I'm not going to put you into the same training routine that I would do with my level of fitness, because I have been running basically my whole life, and I have run marathon and ultra marathon distances. It would be ridiculous to assume that what I can do, I should guide you to do, right? And that's about meeting you where you're at. If you're this imaginary person, and going, let's see what this person can do today that is just a little bit uncomfortable. Let's find out where their edge is and work at that edge. Make some changes at that edge and then rest. And then if you're good tomorrow, then we do a tiny bit more. And if you're good the next day, you do a tiny bit more. And if the day after you need a rest, you take a rest. And then you try again the next day. And this is why my focus as I developed the curriculum for trauma-informed tapping, that my focus has been on teaching you the principles so that you can do it yourself. Because can you see how, if you need to meet yourself where you're at, to do safe, gentle, and effective work with your system, you need to understand how to do this work yourself so that you can do it in 5-minute chunks. I would much prefer that I give you this tool, that I teach you how to do this, and that you then layer in 5 minutes a day, and that you do it all year, rather than for the same amount of money that I could do maybe 1 or 2 sessions with you in a whole year, and that you don't weave it into your life. You will make way more progress by me empowering you in how to do this yourself. So I want to think about whether or not there's anything else. Major differences. We've talked about the importance of learning how to do it yourself instead of just working with a practitioner. It doesn't mean that you can't do one-on-one sessions with me. And I've put a link below this video description. So if you're like, okay, Carolyn, I actually just want to do some of this work with you, I need an experience of it, then we can totally do that. You are welcome to it. And why I have focused so much on teaching is so that you are empowered to layer this into your own life. Because if I hadn't understood how to tap well enough to do little bits and pieces when stuff came up in my life, when stuff was arising, there is no way I would be where I am today. Not a chance. It is only because I knew I had been empowered. I had empowered myself. I had taken it upon myself to understand how to do it so well that I could do it without a practitioner, that I could become my own practitioner for the work. And that's what I want for you. So we've talked about the difference in, the client therapist model versus me teaching you how to do it as a student. We've talked about how if you're tapping along to tap along videos, it can be quite surface level. But if you're working with practitioners who aren't attuned to you, they can go too deep and do too much work and fry your nervous system. And I unfortunately have had experienced that too many times. Pain is a good motivator. So it's like, you are not doing that to my system anymore. I refuse to have this experience anymore. We are going to find a safer, gentler way to do this. And also realizing that all of you are different. We could have 1,000 different human design configurations watch this video over time, and all of you are going to need to implement this tool differently. So if that sounds exciting to you, there is a link in the video description for my email list. It is the first and only place in the beginning that I'm going to be launching these group classes. It's the most cost-effective way to learn trauma-informed tapping, and the first one is going to be live very soon. I hope to see you there.